We're going to talk about how to build a meaningful brand, specifically from our perspective. Um, I'm going to talk about how we rebooted our brand, what it means to become meaningful, and then kind of give you some examples of meaningful in action. And then if there's any time for Q&A, then let's go for it. Rebooting our brand. So in 2018, we thought it was going to be a big year. We had just rebranded our entire company. This was our new visual identity. We just launched version 2 of our software, which I'll talk about in a second. And we celebrated. We started a new category, but then nothing much happened. I would say nothing good happened that year. That was a very tough year for us. A lot of people didn't like version 2 of our software. The brand wasn't operationalized, so we weren't able to experience it within the company as well as we could. And then we even had a data breach. And so we did a lot of soul searching that year. And David, the co-founder, came up to me and he said, "Hey, I think I want to rewrite our vision and mission statement." And then he made another request to me. He says, "Hey, can you work on the brand?" And I said, "Sure, of course." And then I thought to myself, well, what's that? What's a brand? So the first thing that comes to mind when I started doing my research was a quote that I came across by Michael Porter. And this is what he said: "In business competition, there is no best." And I want to make sure you burn this into your brain. So I'm going to probably talk about this multiple times, but there is no best. So stop trying to create something better, or, stop trying to create the best thing. Your job is to create a unique company, and your job is to create a company that offers something different. Now, we're all familiar with the term product market fit, but how do you get the product market fit when this is your competition? So this is in April 2020. This is the MarTech slide. This is where we compete. And you can kind of see the progression. It says MarTech 5,000, but it really should say 8,000 because there's over 8,000 companies there. But if you see in 2011, there was only 150 companies approximately in the MarTech space, and then 350 in 2012. And you can see how technology has enabled more creators to create things, to copy what you're doing. And so the field of competition is crazy. By the way, there's Typeform. But product market fit is no longer enough. It's absolutely critical. You need to get there, but it's not going to get you to where you need to go. And that's where brand comes in, right? And so let's kind of define what that is, because there's no universal definition. Jeff Bezos says your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room, and hopefully they're talking about you in the first place. Seth Godin says that a brand is a promise. I did some workshops with Marty Neumeier, who's an expert in brand. He said a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And so at Typeform, we created our own definition. A brand is really a story, and it's a story that sticks. And that sticks part is the emotional part about the difference that you make in someone's life. And difference could be positive or negative. It's not always positive. But difference is more important than different. As Austin McGee says, any idiot can be different. But to actually make a difference in someone's life actually leads to some sort of differentiation, and which is what everyone is shooting for. And so when you look at this entire field, you're trying to say, well, how can I stand out in this? And I think Maya Angelou said it best. And I think this is another one that you should burn into your brain. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And so when you think about your brand going forward, you want to think about, how are we actually making people feel? What are we making people feel, and how are we making them feel? Something. So if you can do that, then you can kind of cut through all the clutter and get to a point where you are standing out from everyone else. So product market fit was yesterday, but brand market fit is today. And because of the competition, because of the proliferation of, technology, people have started changing their buying criteria. And so we noticed that people want to collaborate with you more when it comes to creating products, even marketing. They want you to stand for something. I know there's been protests in over 40 different countries this year. And I know there was a quick survey that was done during the summer by Edelman. And they said that people will actually buy or boycott based on a brand's response to current protests. And that's over 60% of the people in the US market. And the US market happens to be Typeform's market. So people, more collaboration, want you to stand for something. They want to be seen as community, not consumers. They want more meaning and purpose. And they're looking for the triple bottom line, just people, profits, and planet. And speaking of profits, when it comes to brand, when people have a positive perception of your brand, they're 16 to 41% higher, more likely to pay for a brand that they have an affinity for. And if they have a negative affinity or negative feeling towards their brand, negative perception, they're 15 to 33% lower willingness to pay. And that's a huge difference. And so once they pay, they get into your product. How much are they willing to stick around if they have a positive perception? 11 to 18% higher than the median. And negative perception of your brand, 12 to 15% lower retention. So that becomes a problem if you haven't created a brand that people are really attracted to. Now, let's make no mistake here. The company, me as a director of brand, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to position a company. I don't do branding. I do positioning, and you should do the same thing. So positioning happens here, but your brand lives here. Your brand lives actually in the customer's mind. So the goal is to do your positioning, and the brand lives there, and try to move from this to this. And that's the ultimate goal that we're all shooting for. So David says, hey, man, can you work on the brand? And I had to think, well, what makes up a brand? And it's really three things. It's your company, your identity, your purpose, mission, vision, and values. It's the customer, the problem you're trying to solve and who it's for. And then there's the communication, the way that you express yourself. So for the company, a brand radiates from the very core of a company. This is Jerome Conlon. He worked on Nike's Just Do It campaign. And I remember David saying, well, our goal is to make the web more human. But as we started to refine it a little bit more, we found out that it was actually something else. And, when I started working on this with the creative director, we used the golden circle, which is Simon Sinek's. Basically, he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So you should always focus on that. And this is actually the third most watched TED Talk of all time, if you haven't seen it. So we have our what, which is we create forms and surveys. The difference that we make, which is they're conversational. We were the first to produce conversational forms and surveys. And then our core value, the why, was missing. And what we realized is that we had to go figure out what our customers were saying, and then we had to somehow tie it to what our founders were saying. And people were saying, yeah, we care about how our customers feel about us working with us. And they said many things like this, but we found that people really cared about how they were perceived by their customers. And we also found that people cared about the experience that they were creating by using our tools. Now, bottom line is this: it's a platform that allows us to reach out to our clients to show that we care for them. And so that was a common theme that we saw. And it was also common with our founders too. You see Robert on the left, he cared about building a company culture that really showed that they cared about their employees. And then you have David on the right, and he really cared about the product and obsessing over every pixel. And so we found that care was the thing that drove us. Brand, the customer, you got to do your research and you got to figure out what people want. But what we found when we did the jobs to be done research, we found that people really cared about these 6 things. When they were using the tool, they were hiring Typeform to do these different things. And obviously they cared about how they perceived and they cared about the experience. What we also found is that we got validated when we did some more research. We were changing our pricing, and people really cared about those 2 things. It depended on which part of the world you were from, but people really cared. And then communication, the way you express yourself. Obviously, you have a visual identity, but how we communicate is SURF. And so that means simple. We communicate in a simple way. We communicate in a useful way, in a remarkable way, and in a friendly way. And so that's how we came to those the way that we approach the world. If you have all these 3 things aligned, then you can communicate with clarity, you can communicate your values, and you can take calculated risks with your brand. And so that's important. As far as becoming meaningful, David said he wanted to rewrite our vision and mission statement. We did that. If you rewrite your mission, your mission should actually lead to your vision. So we want to inspire brands to have meaningful conversations at scale. And we want to create a world of more personal business relationships. Now, when you see this, this is actually our strategic objective. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And we created a category, a conversational experience platform, and we want to become a meaningful company. And then I'm not going to share everything that we do because that's giving away too much information. But ultimately, we want to become a meaningful company. And what does that mean? We want to follow this framework that already exists. It's called a Meaningful Brands Framework. And it's basically these three things. You have functional benefits, personal benefits, and collective benefits. So functional is basically, does your product or service deliver? And so Typeform is really about having these meaningful conversations through forms and surveys and quizzes and things like that. But you can also render a Typeform as a chatbot if you didn't know. And then we also have Video Ask, which is communicating with your face. The best interface is your face. And we also created a framework, a meaningful design framework, where, it comprises of beautiful, which is we want to make sure that design is at the forefront of everything we do so that you stand out. And it's personal, that we want to be able to use your name and any personal identifying data that we have to make sure that that interaction is personalized. We want it to be contextual. We want to understand which device you're using, what the environment you're in. And we want to make sure that every conversation is relevant. If you want to talk about soup, we talk about the soup. We don't talk about the salad. So functional is the first part of meaningful brands. Personal is the next part. And it's really about creating customers and customer design. And so we asked, of course, who's our customer? But then we're also asking the question, who do you want your customer to become, or who do we want our customer to become? And so we might know that our customers are marketers, and there's functional growth there. We also know that there's emotional. They want to look and they want to feel like themselves when they use tools. But who do we want them to become? They can just become a better marketer, or we can help them become an influencer. And so customer design is going to be a key part of what we do. I'm going to skip this because we're coming to the end. And then collective benefits. We ran, because of the pandemic, we decided to give our tool away through this Kindness is Contagious campaign. And we collected a lot of stories, but it's important that we give back to the community. And one of the people that used the tool for free was an organization called Mask Match. And basically they connected PPE face masks to health workers across the country. And they ended up delivering over 820,000 masks to healthcare workers everywhere. But the point is that when you look at these functional, personal, and collective benefits, you can see that the functional is not mattering as much, even though it should. Like, you should care that your product works. But the personal and the collective benefits are on the rise. Like, people are expecting companies and brands to do more of these things. And it's the same thing from Edelman's research. You can see that, hey, can you solve my problems? Can you solve society's problems? And can you enrich my life? And of course, we talked about profit earlier. The brand drives higher willingness to pay. And the Meaningful Brands research also bears this out. Significantly higher KPIs outperform the stock market by 134%. And then meaningful in action. We talked about our products. We talked about brand as far as, the kind of content we create. We want to do things that stand out. This is from a film that we created called Locked In, where we hard-coded a Typeform into it. And it was a choose your own adventure style. And I think my time is up. And then finally, how we do marketing, we collaborate more with the customer. When we do events, we did the Next Web. We created like unique T-shirts. And we brought some designers in, and, we brought baristas to the Next Web, and people waited around for 45 minutes to an hour to actually engage with us. And they said it's the best booth experience at the Next Web. But we want to make sure that every interaction counts when it comes to every part of our organization. And this is kind of how we built it in. Customer success. It doesn't matter which part of our organization. Everyone uses this credo to kind of drive what they do. Someone asked in customer success, how do I deal with depression? I feel anxious about my sexuality. And, this is our reply. We could have ignored it and said, that's not a valid question. Or we said, hey, I've also had serious depression a few years ago. If you can access professional help, I recommend it. Please remember, you're not alone. There are people out there willing to help. Don't give up. And this person replied, I can see that, you're friendly and compassionate people could exist in an organization such as yours. Every interaction counts when it comes to our home and the place that we want to build. Instead of building a reception, we built a barception where people can get together and have drinks and talk about work in a friendly way. And it doesn't matter. The entire organization has to be bought in. And we believe that creates a holistic brand experience. And the bottom line is that we need to embody it. As I said earlier, positioning happens here. Your brand lives here in the customer's mind, right? But it's important as a CEO, if you're a founder, that positioning happens here, but your brand also lives in the employee's mind. So we want to make sure that we bring these two things together. And the final takeaway is really that great brands are built from within. And I heard this quote a long time ago: if you don't go within, you go without. And that's my presentation.